Welcome to start the month for this Good Friday, and we're recording on Thursday morning. And as you can see behind us, there's some beautiful daffodils, which I think are at their best at the moment. We're in the Palace Garden, which is looking amazing in the spring light, and it's lovely to have a little bit of warmth as well. So it's looking great at the moment.
And if you don't live so far from Southall, then you might like to come and visit the gardens here. Over the Easter weekend or next week, it really is all the flowers have come into bloom at the moment. And those who don't know this area at all, we're here very close to the cathedral, which is behind us. But as we journey through this Holy Week and on towards Easter morning, of course, we do so against the backdrop of a very difficult and dark time for many across the world, and very particularly as a result of the conflict and wars and suffering, and we're particularly aware of that at the moment in the Middle East, but also in other parts of the world, in Ukraine and South Sudan and other areas, as we approach this Easter morning, recognizing that for all the joy of the announcement that Christ has risen, there are those who will make that proclamation in context where life is really very hard indeed. And in light of that, we're going to read the psalm that's appointed in our pattern of readings, for those who follow it, Psalm 93, that reminds us of the steadfast faithfulness of the Lord, and ultimately makes that great Easter proclamation that the Lord reigns, and above all over sin and over death, and ultimately over all suffering.
So Psalm 93, the Lord reigns, he is robed in majesty. The Lord is robed in majesty and armed with strength. Indeed, the world is established, firm and secure. Your throne was established long ago. You are from all eternity.
The seas have lifted up, Lord. The seas have lifted up their voice. The seas have lifted up their pounding waves, mightier than the thunder of the great waters, mightier than the breakers of the sea. The Lord on high is mighty. Your statutes, Lord, stand firm. Holiness adorns your house for endless days. Now, the question we found ourselves probing as we read this psalm is, how do you hold firmly to your faith and hope in God when the promise of his sovereign care and the promise that his love and his justice cannot be thwarted, when those promises don't sit altogether comfortably with our present lived experience, either because of our own circumstances or the wider world, that we know this to be true, and yet we're living in that tension between that promise, that confident faith, but also our present struggle.
And at times we may find ourselves asking, where is God in the midst of all this brokenness and suffering we see and experience? There are no easy answers, but the promise that comes all through the Bible is that God is close to the brokenhearted. And that's what David declares so movingly in Psalm 34. And it reads, "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit."
And that is what we see supremely in Jesus on the cross. This is where we see how close our God is to our world in all its brokenness and suffering. God is not far off and indifferent to all the struggles and the suffering that we see around us and that may affect our lives. He suffers with us and he suffers for us once for all on the cross. And on that first Good Friday, Jesus, of course, was taking all the brokenness and all the sin and the shame of the world upon himself, so that we might know the extraordinary grace and forgiveness and peace of God that overflows from the cross and on that first Easter morning, and that continues to refresh and renew our lives and transform our weary world. So because of the cross, because of the resurrection, we can declare that there is always hope. God's hope can be alive for us in Christ.
And as we place our trust in him, we are never alone in life or in death. And we will see him face to face in all eternity. This is why the message of Easter is such good news. And the very best way to respond to the brokenness we see around us and experience within us is to join with Psalm 93 and declare with all our heart, "The Lord reigns, the Lord reigns."
So if you feel you need to get out on Easter morning and make that proclamation, not only Christ is risen, but because of that, the Lord reigns, that might be something to do. And whether or not the weather is quite like it is today. And a message, especially to all our congregations across the diocese, the family of this diocese. We just want to thank you so much for your faithful witness all through the year, but thank you for your ministry too, through all the many different local churches. I'm greatly looking forward on Good Friday to being up at Gringley on the Hill in the very north east of the diocese, in the Oswald Beck group of churches, and then to be here on Easter morning as well in the cathedral. But wherever you are, and in all the very different ways in which we mark this Good Friday and on into Easter morning, may you know the nearness of the Lord. The Lord is near to those who are brokenhearted, and the Lord is close to us as we seek to walk for him and pray for our world at this time. God bless you all.